Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mickey, and I will be your host and the presenter for today. Today we're going to talk about e-Bulletins version 3. We're going to go over how to create a template and then how to use that template to send the bulletin week to week. So we're going to start right from the beginning. We are going to go right into the member area. And we're going to begin getting into the bulletins. So this is the member area of ClubRunner, and we're going to start with step 1. And step 1 is actually pretty important. If you ever get lost within the bulletins, this is kind of a way to find your way back to the beginning. Step 1 is this: we're going to click on Bulletin and then Manage Bulletins. This is going to bring us to our bulletin list. The bulletin list is the list of active bulletins. So if you're ever not sure where you are, or you go back to a screen you're not familiar with, it's always Bulletin and then Manage Bulletins. It'll always take you back to this screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a bulletin first. And this bulletin is going to be our template that we're going to be using again and again. So we're actually going to run through the process twice. The first time through, we're going to create the bulletin template, and then the second time through, we're going to edit our template and send it off. So we're just going to start by clicking on Create New Bullets. This step you'll only go through once, because what we're going to do is we're going to create a bulletin template, and this is going to be copy only. Don't edit. In other words, we're not going to be editing this bulletin, we're going to be copying it. You can leave the date as is. You can create a different, you can choose to copy based on a different bulletin template. We're going to create our own template here, so we're not going to worry about this. Bulletin groups, we're going to go over that. You can actually create different groups if you want to send out a bulletin to, say, prospective members. We're going to go over that. Visible on website, this is important for the bulletin template. I'm going to turn this off. I don't want our bulletin template visible on the website. Access level public. You can choose requires login. That means that someone will need a ClubRunner account in order to log in and view the bulletin. But I'm going to keep it public. Editor name, you can enter in any editor name you'd like. Let's see if anyone's in here. Let's go with Mike Aaron. You can enter any editor name and email you'd like. So for this bulletin template, we're going to keep things quite simple. You'll see here content template. What that means is that you'll have there's a different layout for all the various bulletins. You can have two windows on top and one large one at the bottom. Like I said, we're going to keep things simple, and we're going to select this content template right here, which is a narrow column on the left side and a wide column on the right side. Okay. Oh, okay. You know what? I completely missed this warning, and I'm glad this came up. It basically said we have more than 12 active bulletins. You'll notice that I have no send button here. That's perfectly all right. I'm just going to click go back. All that means is we have a lot of active bulletins here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find one that's pretty old. This one is, I don't have to worry. Essentially, in ClubRunner, you're allowed 12 active bulletins in your bulletin list. So we've already reached our maximum limit. If you ever see that warning that you've reached 12 active bulletins, I'm just going to go ahead and delete one. This is one of our oldest ones. And then I'm going to just start over again. It won't take very long. So this is going to be our bulletin templates. Copy only. And we're going to leave everything else the same. I'm not going to worry about the template itself. We're going to create a new template for it. The bulletin group, well, I'll leave it as general just for this example. Turn off visible on website. Editor name, I'll leave that blank. And once again, I'm going to select narrow left, wide right. And now you'll notice we can click on next because this is our 12th bulletin. Okay, I'm going to click on next, and what this does is this gets us into the Bulletin Designer. So the Bulletin Designer is where you lay out your bulletin. It's not 100% visual representation of your bulletin. It's essentially where you'll place all the information. You'll notice that the Bulletin Designer is very similar to the Website Designer in that you can choose your banner. Your main content goes here in the left and right, and your footer goes at the bottom. So we'll just start with the banner. We're going to create our own banner. It's going to be pretty simple, but I'm going to click on Choose Bulletin Banner. Now, like I said, because this is a template, we're going to keep things pretty simple, and you only have to do this step once. So you'll see that there's all kinds of banners here. I'm going to ignore all of them. I'm just going to click on Add New Banner. We're going to create one from scratch. So I'm going to call this, this is the banner title. I'm just going to call this Bulletin Template Banner. You can call it anything you'd like. This is how tall the bulletin banner will be. By default, it's at 150 pixels. If you were creating your own banner, let's say in Photoshop or an image editing program, the dimensions of this default box are 600 wide by 150 tall. So if you wanted to design your own bulletin banner inside an image editing program, it would be 600 tall by 150 wide. I'm just going to keep things simple, so we'll call this Bulletin Template. And what this is right here, this is the where you would go in and actually just change anything you'd want for the bulletin template. I'm just going to keep things quite simple. I'm going to center the text, I'm going to bold it, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Let's go 24. And you might say, well, nothing's happening, so I just have to click the refresh button. And what it'll do is it'll actually refresh, and I can see just a very simple layout. I'm going to hit enter once and just go like that, and there it is. I'm also going to add a background image. Right now it's pretty plain, so you know what I am going to do is I'm going to add a background image. I'm going to click on change. Okay, you have a selection of backgrounds to choose from. Once again, just to keep it simple, I'll use this one. You can use any background you want. Okay, maybe bulletin template. You know what? Let's call this ClubRunner. ClubRunner bulletin. Okay, and that's as far as we're going to go in terms of designing a banner. You can, of course, start getting much more advanced than that. And like I said, if you wanted to use an image editing program, once again, it's 600 wide by 150 tall. Now, in terms of the height, you can make this taller if you had a very tall image and you wanted to use that as your bulletin banner. What you can do is you can change the height of it right here. So instead of 150 pixels tall, I can make it 250 pixels tall, and I'm going to hit. I'm just going to hit refresh, and you'll see that what happens is the banner gets taller. But I don't want to make it. I don't want to get too fancy with our banner. I'm going to go back to 150. That's the default. Click refresh, and there it is. There's your very simple bulletin banner. I'm going to click on Save and Publish, and what that'll do is that will select. You'll see right here this little green arrow that will select the banner as the active bulletin banner. One important button is this Go Back button right here. You're going to use that a lot. Essentially, we're here at the banner editing screen. I want to click on Go Back, and what that'll do is, as you can see, if I leave my mouse over that button, it'll tell me what it'll do. I want to go back to the Bulletin Designer screen. So here I am back at the Bulletin Designer, and you may notice that, you know what, I don't know, did that banner take effect? I'm still not sure. So as we move along designing our bulletin template, we're going to preview the bulletin. That's this button right here. This blue button, what it lets you do is it kind of lets you see what you're doing as you're working. So I'm going to click on the blue preview bulletin button, and as you can see, this is a pretty simple bulletin. You see a banner, you'll see some white space, and you might be wondering, where is everything? There's no stories, we haven't attached anything yet. and this is the default text that appears underneath the bulletin. So I'm going to click once again that same important go back bulletin, and I'm going to keep designing the bulletin template. And like I said, we only have to do this once, and then you can use the same template again and again. So like I said, we're going to keep things as simple as possible. So now I'm going to move over to the content, and on the left side you can add what's called a widget. A bulletin widget are all these rectangles. You can think of a bulletin widget as basically just a little bit of information, a little collection. So for example, I want to list my speakers and events on the left side. And to do that, I would click on Events, and there's my bulletin speakers. These orange tabs are all the categories. So I can, the essentials would give all the essential widgets you'd need. Links are for sharing any kind of web links and so on. I'm going to click the events right here. Okay. And let's see here. I'm just going to take speakers, and I'm going to drag it to the left side. Okay. And then I'm going to take bulletin events, and I'm going to drag that also to the left side. These are automatically generated widgets. So speakers and events would essentially, now that I've dragged them onto the left side, I can leave these widgets alone. I never really have to touch them. So we've got some questions now. So one of the questions is, can you have more than one template? And the answer is yes, you can. You can have several templates, but like I said, you can have a template is essentially an active bulletin. So you can have a maximum of 11 templates. The reason I say 11 and not 12 is you still need that 12th bulletin in order to actually edit and create a bulletin. So you can have up to 11 different templates if you so choose. Someone has asked, will the program shrink images to fit the 150 height? This was back when we were in the designing our bulletin banner. No, it will not. It will just take the image and it will bring it in. What we did is we dragged the speakers and the upcoming events widget onto the left pane, onto the left-hand side of our bulletin. And these two widgets are not under Essentials. They are in the Events tab for the widgets. So I'd click on Events, and then I'd drag these two widgets on. And you'll notice that I have a whole bunch of other different widgets. So you can choose Bulletin PR, custom widgets, and so on. You can also, we're not going to get into this webinar, but you can create your own specific customized widgets. In other words, you can choose to have a Facebook link or anything you'd like and customize it, include your own code. It's outside the scope of this webinar, but that is an option if you so choose. So we're actually, believe it or not too far away from being done the bulletin template. We've populated the left side, and like I said, I kept it very simple, just speakers and events. On the right side, once again, for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to drag only one widget, and I'm going to drag this one. It's called Bulletin Stories. To drag the widget, I'm just going to move my mouse to the middle of the widget, left click and hold, and I'm just going to drag it. Now you'll notice I can't drag the widget anywhere I want. If I drag it here and let go, it doesn't come into the right side. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to click and hold on Bulletin Stories, and I'm going to drag it right into the middle until you see that box. If you don't see the box, it won't stay on the right side. So I'm going to do it one more time. Now I see the box. I'm going to let go, and the bulletin widget stays on the right side this time. This is going to be the main widget of the bulletin template. I guess, for lack of a better word, the meat of the sandwich. The stories are going to be your main content. One thing I want to make sure of, you might do it differently, but for this webinar, I'm going to make sure this stories widget is empty. And what will happen is each week you'll be populating with the stories. So here is how to make this stories widget empty. I'm going to hover my mouse over the stories widget, and you'll see four icons. This is to preview the widget, this is to edit, this is the properties of the widget, and this is to remove the widget. One important note, it says remove this widget from this page. You're not erasing the widget. In fact, I'm going to click on the X right now, and you might do that accidentally when you're designing your bulletin, and it might say, are you sure you want to remove it? And you might accidentally click OK, and you're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. The stories widget remains on the left side. I can just drag it back in. So in case you accidentally hit that red X, it's not deleted, it's just been moved back to the left side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this widget, which is the pencil icon right here. I'm just going to click on it once, and that'll take us into the stories, and you can see that there's no stories right now, which is actually perfect because that's how I want my template to start off with no stories. So once again, I'm going to click that Go Back button, okay, and that will take me back to the Bulletin Designer screen. So we're actually almost complete. We worked on our banner, we've worked on the left and right bulletin content, and now we're going to work on our footer. So I'm going to click on Choose Bulletin Footer. And same thing, we're going to make our own customized bulletin footer, although there's some nice ones here. This one's not too bad, but I'm just going to click on Add New Footer, just so you can kind of get a little bit of experience again. So here's the footer, and we're going to call this, you can call it anything you want. I'm going to call this Template Footer. You'll notice that the footer height by default is 100 pixels. And here is the edit window for the footer. It's just like the story editor. I'm going to type thank you for viewing our club bulletin. You can of course type anything you'd like. I'm just going to leave it simple, center it, bold it. I'm not going to make it too big. Actually, one thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create some dashes like this, just to denote that it's the end of the bulletin. And that's it. I'm not going to make this any fancier than that. I'm going to click on refresh. Okay, and you can see that is that's the bulletin footer. This is what will happen. This is what will appear at the end of your bulletin. You'll see that 100 pixels actually is a little too much because my footer is so simple. I'm actually going to make it even smaller. I'm not going to make it 100. Let's see what 40 looks like. Okay, there it is. Simple, easy. I'm going to leave it at that. You of course can make this much more complicated. You can add your own images and make it as sophisticated as you want, but for this instance we're just going to keep things simple. So I'm going to click the Go Back button. Like I said, that's a pretty important button. It'll and then once again, this is our footers. And I didn't save it, which was actually really good. I'm glad I made that mistake because other people make that mistake too. So I'm going to just go back and click on Add New Footer. I'm going to call this the Template Footer. I'm going to make it 40 pixels. I'm going to make it thank you for reviewing our club bulletin. And this time I am going to save and publish. What save and publish does is it publishes the footer and it becomes the default footer in our bulletin. So I'm going to click on save and publish this time. Okay, and then there we go. And where is the footer? Okay, template footer. There it is. Sorry. Okay, so it's got a green check mark. And that means that this is the currently selected footer. Your club probably won't have all these different footers, so it'll be a little easier to see. So this is now our default footer. I'm going to click on the Go Back button. Okay, that will take us back to the Bulletin Designer screen. This still doesn't look like very much, especially with all these rectangles. So if you'd like to see how the bulletin actually looks, I'd like you to click on the blue Preview Bulletin button. Okay. And now you can see that this is starting to take shape a little bit. Obviously the speakers don't make sense. This is just test data. But you can see that we have our custom header, our automatically populated speakers widget. The stories field is still left blank, but then and here's our bottom footer. Now you'll notice, thank you for viewing, the G is cut off. That's probably because I made my height a little too small. I made it 40, and it probably could use it could probably be 50 or 60. So that's no problem. That's why I really love previewing as I go along. So I'm going to click the Go Back button, and I'm going to choose the bulletin footer again, and I'm going to go back to this bulletin right here. I'm sorry, this footer right here, and I'm going to edit this template footer. And I made the footer height 40 pixels. I'm going to change that to 50 pixels because I noticed that G was cutting off. So it's a subtle change, but you'll notice the box got slightly bigger. So I've made the footer height 50 instead of 40. I'm going to leave everything else alone, and I'm going to save and publish my changes. Okay, there we go. All right, and then there it is. And I'm going to click the Go Back button one more time, and I'm going to preview one more time. The reason I like doing this is if there's any problems, or I can make the change right away by previewing the bulletin. You'll see here that the G is shows properly. It's not cut off anymore. Okay, so I'm going to click the Go Back button. Believe it or not, this template is ready to go. So what I'm going to do, there's one last step to creating this template. And like I said, you'll only ever create this template once. I'm going to click on the Publish Bulletin button. And you might be thinking, wait, I don't want to publish this. I don't want people to see this. Remember, there was a step where we didn't make this template visible on the website. So even though I'm publishing the bulletin, it's not going to appear live on the website because I've unchecked that box. So I'm going to click on Publish Bulletin, and it's going to prompt me, are you sure you want to publish the bulletin? This will make the selections go live, but because I've hidden it off the website, we don't have to worry. So I'm going to click OK, and there we go. The publish is completed successfully. And I'm going to click OK, and now I want to go back to my bulletins list. But if you're not, this might be the point where you're like, well, how do I go back to that bulletin list again? That's where you always refer back to step one. And step one is actually a big one. It's Bulletin, Manage Bulletins. If you can remember that, you can always go back to the screen with all your bulletins. Now, we've got a ton of bulletins here. So you'll see here Bulletin Template Copy Only. That's the bulletin I've created today. Now, this is going back to the gentleman's question about how many bulletins can we have. We have 12 live bulletins. Let's say all of them were templates. You'll notice that because I have 12, I'm not able to edit any more bulletins or create any more bulletins, I'm sorry. So in other words, you can have up to 11 bulletin templates, different ones, but in order to actually create a new one, you have to reserve that 12th active bulletin for the bulletin you're actually creating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick another old bulletin, and I'm going to delete this less test bulletin, only because it's pretty old. I'm going to click OK. This attention message gets replaced by success. So now we're able to create a new bulletin. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to assume that, so we went through all the steps of creating the bulletin. We created our header, our main information content, and we created the footer. So our template is done. I can show you again. Here's our bulletin template. If I click the preview button, I can take a look at it. It doesn't look like much now, but we're going to populate it in a second. I'm going to click the Go Back button. I'm going to hold for 1 second, please. Okay. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to now kind of change gears a little bit. We've gone through the steps to create the bulletin template. Just to prove that you won't have to do this, I'm going to assume that this is now another day. So I'm actually just going to navigate away from here and start on the administration page. And let's pretend that it's now another day and you're ready to actually create and send out a bulletin. So here's the steps. Once you've created the template itself, here's the steps to actually create a bulletin, not from scratch, but using the template that we've already created. So once again, step one, I'm going to click on Bulletin, Manage Bulletins. Okay, and that'll take me to the active bulletins list. And like I said, your club will, I'm sure, won't have so many bulletins, but you're allowed a maximum of 12. I'm going to find my bulletin template, and I made a note for myself too. It says copy only. That's kind of a cue for me to say, well, I don't want to edit this bulletin template unless I want to make changes to it or add more widgets to it. Because it says copy only, I'm going to copy this bulletin template. So what we're doing is we're moving on as if it's now the next week or the next month, and these are now the following steps. After we've created a template, there's actually very few steps involved now in populating and sending out the bulletin. So step 1 was bulletin, manage bulletins, and we found our template right here. Here's step 2. We're going to click on copy because we're going to copy the bulletin template. So once again, we're not creating a new bulletin from scratch. We're basing it on the bulletin template. So just quickly, I'll go over what all these boxes mean again. We have the name. I'm just going to call this test bulletin and give it today's date. You can name the bulletin anything you'd like. Here's today's date. You can change the date if you'd like to a future date if the bulletin is going to be sent out, say, every Friday or whatever you'd like to do. So I'm just going to select today's date. This is really important. I'm going to copy the bulletin from our bulletin template. I don't want to copy from anything else. I want to make sure it comes in as our bulletin template. Once again, the bulletin group, we're going to leave it as general. And then this is really important. You'll notice that visible on website is unchecked. But this is an actual bulletin we're creating, so I'm going to click on visible on website. So I'm going to check that little box. Our bulletin template is hidden. The template that the bulletin that you're sending out will not be. I'm going to choose visible on website. Same thing with the access level. I'm going to leave it at public. The editor name, here's where you can type in a name. I'm just going to type in mine, and I'll just leave the email as anything. And then content template, we're going to leave it alone. I'm just going to pause for 1 second while you take a look at that screen. Okay. Actually, we have a question here. Will archived bulletins be viewable online? That's a very good question. The answer is yes. Archived bulletins will be available online. We're going to get to archives in just a moment because we're actually not too far from completing and sending the bulletin. So we're about a little less than halfway through in creating our new bulletin. We've named our bulletin. We've gone through all the options. The two big ones are name and visible on website. The rest of the options you can more or less leave alone. But those are the two big ones. You have to name it and you have to make sure it'll be visible on your website. And now I'm going to click the next button to move on. And once again, it'll take us back to the familiar Bulletin Designer. Now, here's the thing, especially if you have other bulletin editors or you have multiple people working on the bulletin. Once you've created your bulletin template, you don't need to edit it anymore. You don't need to choose your bulletin banner or your footer or your widgets. There's really only one step here. After I clicked next, it took me here to the Bulletin Designer. So the only step that I'm going to do here is I'm going to hover over the Stories widget and I'm going to edit it. Now the really important thing about this is going to be my real only step week to week. So I never go in and change my widgets or events or banners. I'd always just hover over my Stories widget and I'm going to add or modify some stories. So I'm going to click on the pencil icon. And you'll notice from before the bulletins template, always the way that I like to do it, it starts off with no stories. There's two main options here. This is how we're going to add content to our bulletin. We can create a new story from scratch, or we can add a story from the library. We're going to do both, actually. I'm going to create a new story. It's going to be a very simple story, but I'm just going to click on Create New Story. Okay. And then I'm going to give it a title, Test Bulletin, July 22nd story. There you go. Like I said, simple, simple. I'm going to leave the author. I'm going to leave the date alone. This obviously, you can just choose to display the author and the date. Display social media bar. What that does is it creates a social media bar at the bottom of the screen when this story is generated. It's kind of a neat thing. I'm going to leave it off because I'm going to keep everything as simple as possible. You can choose to turn it on if you'd like. This is the story brief and the story content. So this is almost exactly like the website designer. Just in case you were wondering what story brief and story content mean, I'm going to actually show you. So here's story brief is here, and story content is here. So I'm literally just clicking inside the box and typing. What that means is the bulletin will display the story brief, and the full story will go inside the story content. Once you see the bulletin, it might make more sense. I've had a lot of questions about how to insert an image. So what we're going to do very quickly is I'm just going to show you how to insert an image. Okay. So story brief is here. I'm going to hit enter twice, 1, 2, and what that does is it just gives me a little space to put my image here. There's something really important about adding an image. An image inside a bulletin needs to have a maximum width of 400 pixels. In other words, if you bring in an image and it's very large, what tends to happen is that image breaks the margins. Let's actually go through and do one. So I'm going to click here on the image button. So I'm going to click there, and then you'll see the URL, or this is the image URL is empty. So I'm going to click on Browse Server. That'll bring up our media library. So I'm going to bring in an image. I'm going to try to find one that's really big. Let's see. This one looks pretty big. So I'm going to bring in this image of the yellow flowers. I'll double click, and you'll notice, see, here's the width. It's too large. It's 1024. So what we can do is we can change the width of the image before we even bring it in. So the width of this image is 1024. You can see the flowers here, they're very large. Now I can just click OK and bring it in, but what I'm going to do before I even move forward is I'm going to type 400. And you'll notice one thing is that if I type in 400, then the height changes automatically. That's because of this little icon, the lock ratio icon. Watch what happens if I turn it off. You'll see that it's now unlocked. So I'm going to go back to a width of 1024. The height does not stay the same. So if you're changing the width and height of an image, you have to make sure that that lock ratio button is closed, just like that. And you'll know it is because as you type in the width, the height automatically changes. And so here we go. This image with a width of 400 pixels is the maximum width for an image inside a bulletin. So if we made this 410 pixels, you might start having a little bit of an issue. So we want to stick to 400 pixels or less for the width. And then I'm going to click OK. And here's our image. Sure. I had a question about entering in about doing the image over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the image, delete it, and I'm just going to bring the image in one more time, just so you can see the steps again. This time I'm going to go a little differently though. We've used this. This is the image button, and what this does is brings up our media library. So if I click here, that will bring up my image properties. You'll notice that the image URL is empty, but if I click on Browse Server, I can view all the images in my image library. And you'll see we have plenty here. I can even access my photo albums. If you don't see any pictures, then remember to click the little plus sign beside the photo album right here. I click the plus and minus here. When I click on the photo album, it seems like the folder is empty, but sometimes you just have to click this little plus sign just beside photo albums, and it will load all the numerous photo albums we have. So I found this image of the flowers again, and I'm just going to double click like that, and that will bring the image in. And then I'm going to change the width. Remember to have the lock icon pressed. Okay, and then I'm going to just hit 400 by 300, and then I'm going to click OK, and there's the image of the tulips. And what I'm going to do, just so you can see that the story content is different, I'm going to add an image into the story content, but I'm going to make it a different image, and I'm going to do it a different way. So story content is here. You'll see the blinking cursor at the end of the line. I'm going to hit enter twice, 1, 2. Now instead of using this image button, I'm going to use the square with the plus sign, which is add an image. So this button works a little differently. Instead of this button, which goes directly into your image library, this accesses your computer right away, and I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to click here on add an image, and it's going to go right there, and you'll notice I don't go to my media library. I'm looking directly at my pictures library on my machine right here. So I'm going to hit cancel. I'm going to do that again. So the difference between the two buttons is this is for your image library, and then this is for your actual computer. You can access your computer with one click. So I'm going to click add an image using this button. That will bring up my computer. I can navigate to any place I want, but I'm going to go to pictures. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in another big image. You'll notice this koala bear is same. He's 1024 by 768 pixels. I got that by just leaving the mouse over the image. If you hover your mouse, it gives you the image properties. I'm going to bring in Mr. Koala here, so I'm going to double click on the koala bear, and you'll see right away, way too big. It's too, it's outside of the box. So this is a different way of bringing in the image, and using this method, the image is not does not fit inside our box. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give myself a little more room. If you'll notice here, I'm going to move my mouse to the corner of this story box, and I can actually make my story editor a little larger so I can see a little bit more of the story. I can do exactly the same thing for the story brief. I'm just going to make that a little bigger. I'm going to scroll down. The koala bear is still way too large, so I'm going to hover my mouse anywhere over the image and right click, and then click image properties, and then exactly the same process. I noticed that the lock icon was unlocked, so I'm going to lock it. I'm going to change the width to 400, and the height automatically goes to 300. I'm going to click OK, and there it is. All right, and that's as far as I'm going to go inside the story editor for now. We do have some videos on Website Designer that will go much more in depth into our story editor. But that's in a nutshell. If you wanted to create a story, I'll just make this bold and center it. Then you'll be you can look at some of the other videos we have. I'm going to click now. I've got my file name. I'm sorry, my title name. I've got the story here. I'm just going to click save. Something happens the first time ever you create a story. You can choose where the story goes. This window, this publish story window, only pops up the first time you save a story. So it won't pop up again. The first time you save a story, you get the option of where do you want to display the story. You want to display it on your homepage stories widget, on the stories list page, and which bulletin do you want it to appear in. I definitely want it to appear in test bulletin. I don't want it to appear on my homepage stories because it's a bulletin story. I do want it to appear on my story list or archives page. In other words, that's the page which lists all the stories in your history, all the stories that you've published. So I'm going to click there so that it will display on the story list page, and it will display on the test bulletin. And I'm going to click confirm, and what that'll do is that will save this story, and it will display it in the bulletin I've chosen, and also in the story list page. And I'm going to click confirm, and there we go. And then I'm just going to pause for one moment, please. Okay. What I did was I created a new story from scratch. and there it is, Test Bulletin July 22nd. Now I'm going to, so that's one way to populate content, is to bring in and type in your own content. There's another way also, which is I'm going to add a story that's already been done inside ClubRunner from the story library. And so I'm going to click Add Stories from the story library, and that's going to let me select all the stories that have ever been created inside my story archive. So this is your story archive, and you can see at the bottom here there's some navigation, so I can go to the first page, the next page of stories, the last page of stories. So I can choose any stories I want. I can, let's say I wanted community news. What I would do is I would click on the selection box right here to select community news as my story, or you know what, thought of the week sounds pretty interesting. I'm going to go with that. Now you can select multiple stories, and they don't have to be in any kind of order. You can select however many stories you'd like. For a bulletin, just because of the nature of the bulletin, you don't want too many stories. You want basically stories that highlight the week or the month that you're sending the bulletin out. I'm going to stick with thought of the week and maybe a rotary LOL moment, and we'll stick with those two stories. Now let's say I didn't know what the title of my this story was not here on the first page, and maybe you have, I know some clubs have 10 or more pages worth of stories. That means not 10 stories, but you know, dozens of stories, and you don't want to keep clicking on next and previous and first. So if you know, for example, I want rotary LOL, but I don't know where it is. I can't find it here on the screen. You can just go into the filter records right here, into essentially the search box, and if you type in LOL, it will bring up all the stories with that text string. So I've got a rotary LOL moment. I didn't do any searching. I didn't click back or next. I'm just going to select that. And the other one, I believe it was called quotes. Let's see here. Nope. It was called, let's do Saving Lives in Ghana. But if I couldn't find it, if I knew that the title of my story was Saving Lives in Ghana, oh, sorry, it was Thought of the Week. My mistake. So if it was Thought of the Week and it's not here and I can't find it, I would just start typing in thought, and there's Thought of the Week. Now you'll notice I've been clicking on one story at a time. So it seems like I've only added one story, but it kept track of the fact that I also clicked on rotary LOL. And I'll show you that two stories have been inserted and not one, because when I click on Add Selected Stories, what actually happened is that it got both. It got the LOL, which I selected before, and then I searched for Thought of the Week, and I selected that, and it brought both in. Now let's say, you know what, I don't like the order of this. I want my Thought of the Week at the bottom, and I want Test Bulletin at the top. So here's how to move the story order around. I'm going to move my mouse just a little to the right of the title of any story, and you'll see that the mouse becomes a four-way arrow. I'm going to left click and drag, just dragging it right up. So there's now the Test Bulletin is at the bottom. Thought of the Week, that needs to go down, so I'm going to click and drag it down. And that's it. So I have three stories for this bulletin: Test Bulletin, Thought of the Week, and Rotary LOL Moment. And I'm going to click that Go Back button again to get me back to the Bulletin Designer screen. Okay. And once again, this may not look like much. You may be thinking, well, okay, this is nice, but it doesn't look like a bulletin. So I'm going to click that Preview Bulletin button. Okay. And here's our bulletin. Okay. Now, one thing. Here's the story content. And here's a story brief. Right now, both are showing. I'll just scroll down. I'll let you take a look at the bulletin. Okay. I'm sorry, at the stories of the bulletin. Here's the Thought of the Week. Here's an LOL moment. But we created this story, the Test Bulletin, July 22nd, and the story brief is here, but it's also displaying the story content, the koala bear. So if you want to control it so that just the story brief is here, and then you can click the Read More button. I'm going to click the Go Back button, and I'm going to edit the bulletin properties. The story widget properties right here. So I'm going to hover over the stories, and there's the widget properties. I'm going to click the gear icon, and right at the bottom you'll see that the widget has lots of properties. Right here is where I can control what I want to show. If I only want to show the brief, but I don't want to show the content, I'm going to uncheck Show Content, and I'm going to hit Save. And it says, are you sure you want to do this? I'll click OK. All right. And then we're going to preview the bulletin one more time. And you can see now the story brief is here. Oh, pardon me, I'm sorry. But the story content is not. So that is how to control how the bulletin looks. I'm going to click on Go Back. Okay. The bulletin looks good. I'm going to go back to preview bulletin one last time. I love previewing the bulletin because, you know, any mistakes, you can spot them right away. And you can see that this is actually starting to look like, okay, I might actually want to send this out now. So we've now completed finishing the bulletin, and I'm going to click the Go Back button. And it's going to take us back to the Bulletin Designer screen. And now I want to publish this bulletin. Why? Why would I want to publish it? Because you've made all these changes, but the published bulletin is kind of like assembling the bulletin together. You want to make sure that everything is ready to go. Unless you hit Publish Bulletin, you won't be able to send this bulletin off. So I'm going to click on Publish Bulletin. And then I'm going to click, it says, are you sure you want to publish? It will make your selections go live. This will go live to the website. I'm going to click OK. And it's going to go through, and then publishing completed. I'm going to click OK. And that's it. So it's very subtle, but it does say here that the bulletin has been published. You kind of have to look for it a little bit. But this bulletin is ready to go because of that published on Wednesday, July 22nd message. Now, once again, you may be looking here, okay, I've published the bulletin, now what? I'm not sure where to go. So if you're ever not sure where to go, remember step one. I'll always go back to that step one, which is Bulletin, Manage Bulletins. And that will take us back to our active bulletin list screen. And here is our test bulletin for July 22nd. And then you'll see that test bulletin has several options to the right. Edit, stories, preview. You can preview it again. In fact, I will. Why not? You can never preview enough, at least in my opinion. There's the bulletin again, just to make sure it's the proper one. I'm going to click the Go Back button to go take me back here. The button that we're interested in is the Send button, and it's in bold. What that'll do is I'm going to find my proper bulletin. I'm going to click the Send button, and what that does is it brings me to this screen right here, which is the Send a Bulletin screen. There's 4 major steps. In fact, we're almost complete in sending our bulletin. There's 4 major steps. The first is the email subject. This is the title of your bulletin, Test Bulletin July 22nd. That does not necessarily have to be the title of the email subject. For example, Bulletin June 22nd Test. I just want to show you that you can have a different email subject. 99% of the time, I would just stick with, whatever you titled your bulletin, that will be the email subject. Okay, so that's step 1. Before we move on to step 2, 3, 4, I'm going to ask you to do one thing. So before you even look at recipient schedule, I want you to click on Send to Myself when you're sending these bulletins. What this does is this sends the bulletin to whatever email address you've set up inside ClubRunner, and that's very helpful because you'll be the first one to receive the bulletin in your inbox. And if you remember to click Send to Myself right away while you're working on steps 1, 2, 3, 4, by the time you're ready to send, it may have actually already sent to your inbox. So when you come to the Send a Bulletin screen, you can click on Send to Myself first, and then work on all the other the 4 steps. So we've done step 1. I'm going to imagine that we clicked on send to myself, and so that will work in the background. While that works, I can select the recipients. I can choose who it's going to go to. Because this is a club bulletin, I'm going to make sure that all my active and honorary members get the bulletin. One thing to note is that here I'm going to uncheck this box. You have 121 people as active and honorary members, and right now you selected 0. Same thing for inactive. There's 0 people selected out of 31. Now if I click the checkbox beside active and honorary members, only 95 are selected out of the 121 people. And I know you might be thinking, well, what's going on? Why isn't it 121 out of 121? So to find out why, you can click the little plus sign beside active and honorary members, and you'll see that corporate and honorary members, they're all selected, 1 of 1, 5 of 5. Your active list, not everyone is selected. So what I'm going to do is, for the active list, I'm going to click on Expand List, and it will show me that not everyone, I can't even select Art Demo, Considine Lee, Barbara Chapel. Sorry, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing all these names, but you might be wondering why. Why can't I select this? I'm clicking and nothing's happening. So to find out why you're not able to select a member to send to, hover your mouse over the box and leave it for a second. And do you see the message that pops up? It says email address for this recipient is missing or invalid. Barbara Chapel does not have a proper email address set up. And that therefore you're not able to select her. Even though I'm clicking away, I can't select her. Let's check out Art Demo. He also may have, he does have a missing or invalid email. Now some people have chosen to opt out of the bulletin, and that might pop up when you hover over someone's name. It may, instead of email address is missing, it may say this person has opted out of the bulletin. Any member in your club has the right to opt out of club communications if they so desire. It's inside their privacy settings in their member profile. That would be another reason that you can't send to that member. So that's kind of why I wasn't able to select all my members. So I'm kind of satisfied with that. Okay, so some people don't have email addresses set up. We'll definitely have to do something about that and set up an email address for Barbara and for Art and for Donald Duck. So I'm going to click Done. And we'll say, okay, it's not going to go out to everyone, but it's going to go out to most people, 95 out of 121. Most of the time, if it's an inactive or ex-member, I'm going to ignore them because they're probably not a part of the club. They probably don't want to get the bulletin. Other users, I can click the plus sign and I can see that there's all these different kinds of users. Sure, I'll select them. Friends, let's say for example you have a friends bulletin and you don't want to send the club bulletin to people outside of the club. I'm going to leave friends blank. So this is a club bulletin. I'm not going to send it to friends. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Contact groups, you can choose. This is your customized contact group, so you have bulletin subscribers, donors, media. Let's say I'm going to send this to media, and I'm going to ignore all the other ones, but it's going to go out to 3 of 3 media members. So we've selected our recipients. It's going to go out to all these different sets of people. Okay, and then you'll see step 3. I'm going to move on. Just for the sake of time, for send, 99.9% of the time, you're going to click on send right now. If you click the schedule button, you can select when the bulletin goes out. Like for example, if you're on holiday, I think Monday, August 3rd is a holiday for some people. You can select this bulletin to go out at that time, and you can enter a time like 4:01 p.m., whatever you'd like to. But honestly, 99% of the time, you're going to click on send right now. And then there's step 4, which is to click this checkbox to automatically archive. Now, this is where we're going to get into what the archive means. So you can take your bulletin, and if you click this checkbox, you can automatically archive the bulletin immediately after it's sent. That's kind of key. So what will happen is the bulletin will send. the bulletin will archive. You're done for the week or for the month. So what the archive means is once a bulletin is archived, you can no longer touch it, you can no longer edit it, you can no longer change it. I've been using the analogy if you're, imagine baking a cake. Once you put it in the oven for, say, half an hour to an hour, the cake is baked. You can't unbake it. And that's what happens when you click on Automatically Archive. You're basically baking the cake. You can't touch it after that. So I'm going to leave this. Now, why would you do this? Because once it's automatically archived, I want to make a change or whatever, I'm going to show you that you can fish your most recent bulletin out of the archive. I'm going to show you how that works. Now, let's see. Just so I am going to send this, but I don't want to send to everybody. So I'm just going to select. Let's do Joe Abbey. I'm going to make sure it doesn't actually. Let's do Al Bundy. I'm just selecting one member. I just want to make sure it doesn't go to any actual email address. So this bulletin is only going to go out to one member. You'll notice all this time has passed. If I would hit send to myself, it would have gone into my inbox. I could have checked the bulletin in my email, made sure it's good. If there are any problems, and you're like, wait, something's wrong, there's a typo, you can always hit the cancel button. That will cancel this send. You can go back, edit your changes, and come back to this screen. But for the sake of argument, our bulletin is pretty good. We've previewed it a million times. Like I said, I love previewing. We've gone through all the steps. We're going to automatically archive this bulletin. I'm just going to click send, and it's going to ask me, are you sure you want to send to 4 recipients? Oh, that's right, because I clicked other users. I'm going to click cancel. You'll see here other users. I'm not, contact groups. I'm going to uncheck media. I'm only going to select it to one person. So I'm going to click send, and it's going to say, are you sure you want to select to one member? And I'm going to click OK. The second that I click OK, the bulletin gets sent, it gets archived, you're done for the week. I do want to kind of go over very quickly what this entails. You'll see here, this is the send history that the bulletin has been sent off. You can view the bulletin. You won't be able to view the stats right away. It takes a bit of time for the statistics to come up. The more members you have, the slower the statistics populate. So the bulletin has been sent off. And if I go back to my step 1 and you're like, well, where do I go again? I'm not sure. If you're ever lost, it's always Bulletin and Manage Bulletins. So we've sent off Test Bulletin. I'm going to click on Manage Bulletins, and you'll see it is no longer here. It's not in our active bulletin list anymore. We have our template, but we don't have the July 22nd bulletin. Because we chose to archive the bulletin right away, I can go here to the Archived Bulletins section. I'm just going to click on it, and it shows me all the list of bulletins that have been archived. And there's my bulletin, Test Bulletin, July 22nd. Okay, you'll notice one thing, that this is the most recent bulletin that I've sent out, but I'm able to copy it. Do you see that the copy button here is active, whereas it's not for all the other bulletins? The most recent bulletin can still be copied out. So let's say, for example, I sent this out. It's now July 23rd or 24th or 25th, and someone comes back to me and says, "You made a typo. You spelled my name wrong. You have to change this." And you're like, "Well, okay." What I can do is I can copy the bulletin, essentially making it active again. I can call this July 22nd version 2, and I go through all the same steps again, and I can actually change and edit this bulletin that I pulled out of my archives. I'm going to do that real quickly, actually. I'm going to go here. So I'll go here, visible on website, just to show you how quickly we can move. There, let's say there's a typo in one of the stories. So it's going to go here. I'm going to go into the stories widget, click the edit button, and my test bulletin, July 22nd story, had a typo. There it is, here now. There. Okay, I updated. I'm going to click on Save and Publish. I'm just going to run through all the steps again. Okay. And now I can choose to literally send this bulletin off again. So there's my story. I'm going to click on Go Back. Let's just have a quick little preview. Okay. There's story brief is here now. I've made my change. I'm going to click go back. I'm going to click publish bulletin. All right, and then just so we go over the steps one more time, bulletin manage bulletins. You'll notice it's called version 2 now. Here it is. I'm going to send it off. And what you can do is you can send the bulletin again with your revised changes. So if someone gives you a revision after the fact, you can still fish your most recent bulletin out of the archived bulletins. I'm going to cancel and delete this version 2, but just to show you how quickly you can kind of edit or a bulletin once it's been created. I'm going to click the delete button, and I'm going to get rid of July 22nd version 2. There is one thing I want to talk about. I'll try to be as brief as possible. We never discussed bulletin groups. I'm going to click here on bulletin groups, and you can see that you can have various bulletin groups set up. So for example, let's say you had a bulletin group for club members only, and then a bulletin group, let's say, for prospective members. And you can actually create 2 different bulletins, one for club members and one for prospective members. So I'm going to click here on add group, and I can actually give it a group name. I can say, if I can spell, prospective members. That's going to be my new bulletin group. I'm going to be able to show 12 bulletins. Do you want to make this group visible on the website? I'm going to say no, because let's say this is an internal private bulletin that's only going out to prospective members, so I'm not going to make it visible on website. Obviously, I need to make it public because a prospective member would not be able to log into ClubRunner. This is kind of nice too. You can add a customized greeting for your prospective members. So, for example, thank you for coming to our meeting last week. Here is our most recent activities. Here are our most recent club activities. I know that's pretty long-winded, but hopefully it gives you an idea of, you know what, you can create a completely different bulletin for someone who's not in your club at all, and as long as you have their emails and they're in your bulletin subscriber list, or their friends, as long as you have their email addresses, you can send out a bulletin to prospective members with this customized message. I'm going to click save. And then that way you can see we have a new bulletin group, prospective members. And you might be wondering, well, wait, how do I send a bulletin? How do I create a bulletin for them? So I'm going to go, remember, if you're ever lost, always bulletin, manage bulletins will take me back to the active screen. And you can now go through and start this webinar all over from the beginning again. You can create a new bulletin template. I'm not going to do that, obviously, but you can create a new bulletin template for the bulletin group prospective members and call this prospective members bulletin template, or whatever you want to call it. That's pretty long-winded, but you get the idea. And this is essentially starting us off at the beginning of the webinar. You can now create a brand new template for your prospective members. The prospective members template may be, you can choose to have the same design or a different design, but you can now create a completely different bulletin for 2 different sets of people. I'm not going to go through that because essentially that's basically starting off from square one again. However, I hope that's a good place to end off with the bulletins. I'm going to hit the cancel button. Hopefully all of these steps made sense, but if not, we have several knowledge base articles, and if you ever need help, you can just refer to our knowledge base articles, or you can just call us at the number below. And thank you very much for listening. Okay.